We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went.
Well, hey there, lovely people. So Dan Gryder is back, and this time he has a response to my debunking. I don't know if this is a direct response. He probably won't name me by name, probably, or talk about my debunking video. I wouldn't expect, because that would just send people to the truth. But this is his response to it, I'm sure. Deep government agenda. Well, okay, so that's what happens is when you provide evidence. If you can't actually attack the evidence, you attack who supplied the evidence, and that's what Dan's going to do, because now he's going to say that the FBI have an agenda, I guess, to make Richard McCoy not Cooper, or an agenda to say that Cooper died, or who knows. We'll find out. But they have an agenda, and obviously the agenda is against his agenda. So that's what's critical here. But this is going to be a response to my debunking, I'm sure. He's going to attack the FBI, the sources. You can't believe the sources, yada, yada. But one thing I noticed in here is in this description when he starts out here, this is ridiculous. He says, after I produced the first 2 videos, the FBI contacted us and wanted interviews. No, man. Gun to my head, that did not happen. The FBI did not contact you out of the blue after watching YouTube videos. That's not how that works. Okay, the FBI does not give a damn about the D.B. Cooper case. If you contact them and say you have a parachute, they'll listen. Or you found them some of the money, they'll listen. But they're not going out of their way. There is one case agent who handles this case. He is in Seattle. He is a busy guy. He handles like Asian gangs or something in Seattle as his real job. This is not on his priority list to go talk to Dan Gryder, I guarantee you. But this is even more preposterous, though. He says the FBI, this is a declarative statement that he wrote. The FBI is convinced that Richard McCoy was in fact D.B. Cooper. That's a lie. Okay, if anybody watching this is a Dan Gryder fan, the man is just lying. Like, he just says these things. Like, that is a lie. The FBI is convinced that Richard McCoy is in fact D.B. Cooper. No. Where? Based on what? Then he says they have indicated that while the evidence, the parachute he found, the phony parachute that won't even work, is obviously legitimate. So they have indicated that while the evidence is obviously legitimate. No, they have not. That is a lie, because how would they authenticate this parachute as being the one that D.B. Cooper jumped with? They would look at their own case files. There's no secret documents in the cloud. They would look at their own case files, which I presented their own case files from 71 and 72. So they would look at the same documents that I looked at to prove that this wasn't Cooper's parachute. They did not say it was legitimate. That is another lie. So this man just gets away with saying lies, and I guess people believe it. So, but let's see what other lies he says. So let's check this out. We'll do this reaction video. I know that some of it he talks to an older guy in North Carolina, I think. I scrolled through a little bit. Haven't done a deep dive in this, but I know he talked to some guy in North Carolina who says that Richard McCoy Sr. said that his son was D.B. Cooper, whatever. I'll skip over that. Also, at the end, he plays about 20 minutes of this news segment featuring Russ Callum and Bernie Rhodes, the people who wrote the Real McCoy book. We'll not deal with that, but we'll just start here and see what we've got.
The FBI was stupid. From the beginning, they made massive mistakes, like searching the rugged mountainous terrain 30 miles too far north for a man named Cooper. Between the makeup, Raleigh cigarettes, and sipping bourbon, his disguise was perfect.
Between the makeup, the Raleigh cigarettes, and the bourbon, his disguise was perfect. Well, the makeup. Okay, so there is no indication that Cooper was wearing makeup. The witnesses, I mean, Tina Mucklow, we have her again, but if you believe what the FBI says, but Tina Mucklow sat next to him for 5 hours, no makeup. Okay, it's a woman who wears makeup every day of her life, no makeup. Well, they for damn sure knew that McCoy was wearing makeup because it was running off his face, dripping off his face during his own hijacking in April. The man was that nervous. But he was calm as a cucumber the first time he commits a hijacking, but panicking the second time. Also, if this disguise was perfect, then why not do it a second time? Why not just use the same disguise? It doesn't make any sense. Why wear a disguise like McCoy did that drew attention to himself? His own pilots and crew knew he was a hijacker before he even started his hijacking because of how he was dressed. Cooper blended in the opposite. So, yes, the FBI were stupid. Well, maybe somebody else was stupid and got caught 2 days later after their own hijacking.
Yes, his disguise was perfect. Sometimes the obvious can be right in front of you and you just can't see it. Sometimes our government is more concerned about covering their mistakes than the truth, and we just can't see it. Sometimes the government agenda becomes the goal. My name is Dan Gryder. I didn't solve this D.B. Cooper case. I'm not an investigator, and I'm certainly not a filmmaker. My efforts have centered around the goal of forcing the FBI to come clean on this one. And now it's pretty obvious it just needs some resolve. Yes, resolve. Now the FBI has been forced to take some kind of an action. They were in 2 homes illegally, and they contracted to kill a man as their final solution to this long-running agency embarrassment.
Okay, so he's saying that they assassinated Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. Okay, because he was Cooper? I mean, why not just... So, okay, just logically, okay, so I'm guessing he's going to say that they killed McCoy because they wanted... what is he even saying? Like, why not just kill him and then make up evidence that he was Cooper, and then they're not embarrassed? I mean, I think he's got it backwards. Like, they would kill McCoy and somehow frame him for being Cooper, or if he was the real Cooper, they would have evidence that he was real Cooper, or they would just come out and say he was Cooper. So they killed him to hide the fact that he was Cooper. Okay, well, okay.
This case is over. No one can condone the actions of Richard and Karen McCoy in 1971 and 1972. Hijacking is not only illegal, it's just not a great idea.
Why are they showing this poor man who has
gout? The mystery that has endured all these years has now been shown to be a product of government agenda. They were looking in the wrong place. They couldn't find him. They couldn't prevent his second hijacking. Their prison system couldn't hold him, and he exceeded their agency ability. The easiest answer was just to eliminate him. That became their agenda, creatively disguised as simply not solvable. When you finally see what's in front of you the entire time, then it all makes a little more sense. At some point, someone has to pull that disguise off.
P.T. Barnum.
D.B. Cooper, Part 4, Deep Government Agenda. I got a lot to explain. How did you like that intro section? I shot that to try to give you a little bit of illustration into the world of disguise. I'm not much on disguises. I'm not very good at it, but I thought I'd try to illustrate
Neither was
that.
McCoy.
How'd you like that? This section has a bunch of video. I'm going to include in sections here. This is D.B. Cooper, Part 4, Deep FBI, Deep Government Agenda. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. We're going to start with our CNN section. Yes, I was on CNN. We got about I don't know, 50 or 60 media outlets around the world that carried the story about DB Cooper and our parachute find. I got some explaining to do, and I'm going to
Yeah, you
explain
do.
that. Here's our section with CNN. I can tell you, going into CNN, they give you no briefing. I was on there twice live. I had no idea what to expect or how it was going to work, where to look at. All of a sudden, you're on the couch and it goes live. In the process, they don't even tell you what the questions are going to be in advance. So I was totally caught off guard on both of them. On, yes, I know the subject, but they don't give you any briefing. Let's show you this section next. This is CNN. This is the second one of them. This video here is at 1.6 million views on CNN's YouTube channel right now.
I think that shot, Kelvin can get it really low. Yeah. Now I can pick up the spot.
Stand by.
So this is a mystery that has baffled people for generations, and especially the FBI since 1971. Who is D.B. Cooper, the man who managed to hijack a plane, parachute out with $200,000, and disappear? Did he leave? Where is the money?
Well, a former pilot and YouTuber says he's got some of those answers for us. Joining us now is Dan Gryder, volunteer host of the YouTube
Former
show
pilot.
Probable Cause. Dan, it is great to see you. I have been trying to get my head around this crazy story and how you discovered this parachute, which you've been looking for years now, right? Tell us the backstory.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, It is a crazy story. America has been enamored with this story. 53 years ago, the guy jumps out of the air.
Dan Gryder does not know this case for crap. So let's see what easy mistakes he makes just explaining the hijacking. We'll see how he does.
Plane with $200,000, never to be seen or heard from again. What people don't know is that there was another one exactly like it 6 months later. Same guy did both of them. He went back and fixed all the little problems that he had on the first one, namely being able to hold on to the money.
Yet he got caught the second time within 2 days. So, okay, that makes perfect sense. He did a better hijacking, according to Dan, but got caught. That's not better. Sorry.
So let's start here. Richard McCoy, who is he? And take the similarities between these two hijackings in 71 and 72 and bring us forward to how you came to this property and potentially a piece of the evidence.
Well, it all started with this book. There was two government men that wrote this book in 1990, and it's on the table here. I got interested in this after this book was published, but the book got shut down. Those two guys published this book that said, without a doubt, Richard Floyd McCoy was D.B. Cooper. They wanted to put that through at the time, but they got shut down because the search warrant on the second hijacking was illegal. After he did his second hijacking, they busted into his house, but their search warrant was not proper. Therefore, they were almost in danger of having the second one thrown out. So that's how I ended up on this.
Wait, so that's why the book was pulled? The book was pulled because of an illegal search warrant from 18 years earlier? What? What does that have to do with what's in the book?
I read this book and started down that path, and it's been 20 years of traipsing around carrying video cameras and going to all these locations.
Okay, so you brought a piece of that parachute that you found. Can we see it?
Yes, I have a sample of the actual parachute canopy. This was found in July 22 in Richard Floyd McCoy's mother's possessions. She had recently died, and we ended up in her. This canopy has never been seen or touched by human hands, but I'll let you touch it. This is the actual. Okay? Sure. This is the actual sample of the canopy from D.B. Cooper. That's the actual parachute that lowered him to the ground November 24 of 1971.
Okay, and again, he is lying. We know that the parachute canopy was a 24-foot Steinthal from July 1960, well, if you believe the government, right? But yes, that thing was from 1943. That is a reserve parachute from World War II, probably brought home by his dad as a souvenir from the war. That is not, again, we have this serial number for D.B. Cooper's parachute canopy. This ain't it. But I mean, he just says things. It is it. Look at this. This needs demonstrative statements. He's not saying it might be, could be. It is.
And so Richard McCoy was known as the hijacker in 72. The question was he also responsible for the hijacking in 71? And when you found this evidence from the 71 hijacking on his property, you think you have this evidence that links him. How do you know that this is the shoot? This is part of the rig from the 71 hijacking.
The one question that they asked that I did not get a chance to answer properly: how do we know that the parachute that I found is legitimate? Well, I can tell you right up front, I am not an antique military bailout parachute expert at all. I'm a
You don't say.
Civilian jumper. I'm not even a rigger. I don't build those things. I don't alter them. The old military bailout rigs from that time period are not something that I am an expert on. All I can tell you is that the FBI completely...
Well, maybe you should be an expert on them before you go onto the world stage claiming something, Dan. Like, just do a little research.
Bumble this investigation from the very beginning. Obviously, all that we know for sure, the things in common, are that we are looking for a green military bailout rig that started life as a bailout rig and got modified. How did it get modified? Well, it got D-rings installed. The rig that I found definitely got cut open.
How did it get modified? It got D-rings installed. Says who? Says who? Says when? Where's the evidence? Okay, if I said that, I can show you a document that says something like that. He's literally just saying that. No, there is no document. No one has ever said that there were D-rings installed onto D.B. Cooper's parachute. Like what?
And D-rings installed and sewn back together. D-rings were installed. The ripcord was definitely moved. The packing tray on back got enlarged. The canvas area in back. And how do we know that this is the D.B. Cooper rig? Because it was done by Earl Causey. Earl Causey actually signed this rig with his own signature. I'm going to show you the stitching here. This is definitely...
Earl Causey signed this. Where's his signature? He signed it. Okay, let's see. Show us.
Earl Causey, cheap, junky stitchmanship. He wasn't much of a seamstress. He was a good packer. He was a horrible seamstress. This is Earl Causey's work right now.
Oh, nice of Dan to use gloves. Yes, this is Earl Causey's doing a sewing job. How do you know that? Like, he's going to say he's Santa Claus next and just, I'm Santa Claus. Take my word for it. Like, what do you do? He just says these things.
This is video footage of the actual rig that I found. How do I know that it's the rig? Well, it was in McCoy's property. It was in his mother's possessions. She was storing it for him as a keepsake. Yes, for sure. How do we know that this?
Yes, because that's what I do. If I commit a capital crime, I will give my mother the evidence and say, hey, keep it as a keepsake, Ma. Jeez Louise, Dan.
This is the actual D.B. Cooper rig. Well, we're looking for a green military rig that started life as a bailout and got converted to be a sport rig. That's all I can tell you. Is it an Air Force rig? Is it a Navy rig? I don't know because
It's an Air Force rig. We're looking for a Navy rig. Yeah, you don't know. Well, you do now. You've been educated. It is a Air Force rig you found, not a Navy rig. We're looking for a Ford. You found a Chevy. These are different things, Dan. Don't act confused. Oh, I don't know the difference in a Ford and a Chevy. How am I supposed to know? Well, maybe do some research first.
The FBI messed up their 302 files and their statements.
Yes, the evidence is wrong.
Conclusively, they absolutely got this entire thing messed up. There's not one single eyewitness piece of information, handwritten statement from anybody, including Earl Causey. They're all via this thing called the 302.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you about the 302. The 302 is a form. It's a record, a memorandum of conversation. It is third, fourth, and fifth hand information at the...
Fifth hand? No. Okay.
Very best from the FBI, transcribed to a secretary who sits down at a typewriter to type it up. Is there opportunity for error? Of course there is. The FBI's main problem at the time was they didn't know anything about jets or air stairs or hijacking or bailout rigs or sport rigs or the fact that anybody would intentionally want to jump out of an airplane on purpose. All of that was completely foreign to them. What did I find? I think I found a green military bailout rig that started life as a bailout rig. What was it originally? We don't know. I thought we were looking for an NB8. Is the rig I found an NB8? It looks like it could either be an NB8 or an Air Force.
It's not an NB8. Period. Full stop. Remember, it's got the Ford logo on it. Yours has a Chevy logo. These are very different things.
Course, doesn't really matter. All the bailout rigs from that time period all started life as a bailout rig. They were all green. Slight differences to all of them. There's probably 30 different types of bailout rigs. I don't really care at this point whether it was an NB8 or an Air Force rig.
Of course you don't care. Sure, you seem to care when you found it by saying, oh, this is the NB8. You seem to care a lot when you were so confident.
Or what it was. All I can tell you is specifically this rig had been highly modified to make it go from being a bailout rig to being a sport rig.
That rig's been modified to not even be a parachute anymore. As I've shown in other videos, the ripcord handle and the ripcord housing loop are on opposite sides, which is not a possibility for a workable parachute, really. Where's the ripcord handle itself? Okay, where's the ripcord housing? This is like Frankenstein's incomplete monster of a parachute that Dan found. Has no bearing with DB Cooper at all. Period. Full stop. But let's continue, Dan. Come on.
And that's what Causey told us that he did. He modified a rig for his own personal use. That means intentional parachute jump. That means the ripcord housing has got to be moved. You got to make the packing tray a little bit bigger. You got to install D-rings so you can put a value reserve on front. All those things. Those are all the qualities that I found. And in the CNN video interview that I did not have an opportunity to answer that conclusively for CNN, and I wish that I had. Honestly, the whole thing happened so fast. I was totally unprepared for the entire interview and how that was going to go. I didn't even know where to look. They don't even tell you what camera to look at or how to conduct yourself. I thought I did okay for the lack of information that I had going in. Literally, they sit down and all of a sudden this thing is on and you're live and you're fielding these questions one after another as they come. And that was the very best that I could do.
Well, joining me now is the man who helped uncover the parachute. Dan Gryder, he is a retired pilot, a YouTuber, and a DB Cooper sleuth. Dan, great to have you here tonight. Tell me about how you found that piece of evidence and why you believe that belonged to DB Cooper, who you believe is actually Richard McCoy Jr.
That's correct. Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me on. Yes, we found that parachute. It was the description of the parachute that was used that night was very, very specific in that it was modified. So all these years, for 20 years, I've been looking for this green military, highly modified parachute. And when we stumbled upon it by accident, I pulled it out and I took one look at it and I could instantly see the modifications. I've already discussed this and addressed this thing about disguise. Yes, of course, McCoy wore a disguise or both. And think about the name, Dan Cooper. Dan Cooper was a comic book legend, common in Europe. It was a French-Canadian cartoon that was very popular in Europe. Dan Cooper was a cartoon image. The alias that McCoy used on the second one was James Johnson. James Johnson was a U.S. lieutenant colonel, fighter pilot. He fought in World War II and he had kills, he had everything. He was a parachute guy, he was a jet guy, he was a fighter guy. It was somebody that Richard Floyd McCoy looked up to equally. Dan Cooper was his first alias. James Johnson was his second one. He signed both of those. We're going to talk about the cigarettes, the Raleigh brand cigarettes in just a second. But I think it's interesting that the FBI agenda, our government agenda changed. Initially, their agenda was to find the guy. When they couldn't find him and they got absolutely snowballed, their agenda became to cover it up. Even to this day, their agenda, the FBI agenda on this is anybody but McCoy. Absolutely. Please, anybody but McCoy. That is.
Why would they care? Anybody but McCoy. Okay. Explain, Dan. I mean, okay, if it was McCoy, I mean, haven't you heard the FBI agents from back then in the interview saying, if we could have made McCoy to be Cooper, we would have? They wanted to. They tried really hard. They could not get prosecutable evidence against McCoy because he wasn't Cooper. It's that simple. You are wrong, Dan. Just
exists today. I'm going to read this 302. If you notice, the hijacking occurred in November of 71. This 302 was written in August of 72 after they're still trying to substantiate and show their bosses that they didn't miss it and McCoy was not it. They're trying to tell you that it could not possibly be McCoy because they have a 302 that says that he wasn't. Well, this is not handwritten by the person who was there. This is a 302 written by FBI who told it to an FBI who told it to an FBI who told it to a secretary who typed it up. I'm going to read it to you. This is from August 15 of 72. It's on your screen. So-and-so says that he was a student at Brigham Young University working on his master's degree. He stated that he remembers Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. and recalled he was at his residence on Thanksgiving Day, 1971. He stated he met McCoy in a law enforcement class. He stated McCoy had told him that he had been in Southeast Asia in the military and that he planned to return there after his graduation. He stated McCoy invited him to his home on Thanksgiving, but he did not remember anything that was said by McCoy or any of the other guests. So you got this 302 from this magic mystery Taiwanese guy that goes to their house for Thanksgiving, but he can't remember anything about it. This is in August of 72, and now it's a 302. FBI is going to completely hang their hat on Denise's testimony. Denise is the sister-in-law. Denise's alibi. Denise provided the alibi that said that Richard Floyd McCoy was home for Thanksgiving, and yet there's gas receipts and other credit card information from Las Vegas, 1971. Denise tells you in her own words, Karen and Richard McCoy were gone from Provo 3 or 4 days, Thanksgiving of 1971.
Yeah,
I got this interview I'm going to play next. This 302, this is the agencies, this is the FBI's absolute scapegoat. They use this as a form of perjury. They still use this today. They can write down what they think that you said and present.
Okay, just think about this logically. What would be their agenda in August of 72 to make up something to show that it wasn't McCoy? Wouldn't their agenda be to make up something that it was McCoy to frame him? Why would they make up an agenda to have him to not solve the case? So their agenda is to not solve the case in 72? This makes no sense.
In court and call you for perjury if your testimony differs from what's written down on the 302, you're off to the races for perjury. Isn't that crazy? That's an FBI tactic. That is the agenda of the FBI, to be able to use their 302 to write down whatever they want with no substantiation at all and call it good. The FBI.
Okay, that sounds, so he's projecting, I guess, to be able to say what you want with no substantiation. Viewers of Dan Gryder who are watching this, if any of you are watching this, where is anything substantive for him? He is literally just saying things. No, he's not backing it up. He keeps waving these books around and stuff. He's never showing you what's inside the book, because what's inside the book is not what he's saying. So,
FBI 302 trumps a witness statement on the stand. Isn't that something? Here's a interview that I did with the guy that I found recently. It took me a long time to track him down. This is very interesting. This is not rock solid DNA evidence, but this is an interesting story.
Okay, I don't really care about some older guy who is remembering something from 50 years ago. Let's fast forward through this. We'll get to, good grief, this goes on. Oh, there's Larry Carr. All right, let's see what we got here.
Evidence, science and evidence. It's going to be rock solid. They're going to have to tell you exactly what happened. Let's listen to Larry Carr. First of all, let's listen to who he is.
My name's Larry Carr. I'm the case agent for the D.B. Cooper case out of the FBI's Seattle office.
Here's Larry Carr's explanation using science and evidence. Let's listen to Larry Carr tell you what happened when the skyjacker left the airplane Thanksgiving of 71. What happened to him? This is according to FBI agent Larry Carr.
And so when he jumps out of the aircraft, I think he just started tumbling right then. Just tumbling, panics, and once you panic, you really can't.
Here's a difference. Larry's looking very young there, but here's a difference in Dan and Larry. Larry just said, I think he did something. He did this. He tumbled. Dan says, it is the parachute. He did this. He did that. Larry accurately says, I think something.
Can't do anything. So he's falling. He doesn't know where he's at. He can't see. He has no visual reference on the ground.
This is an opinion. Okay.
He's out of control in the air and starts to panic, can't pull his chute, and hits the ground with never opening his chute.
You know, there's been others out there, everybody from all over the place, the lowest of the low in America, all the way down to Mississippi criminal defense lawyers have weighed in on this thing. They got no idea.
I'm the lowest of the low. Okay, Dan. Well, I'm not the one with $1 million lawsuit against me. Okay, sure.
Idea what they're talking about. Even this guy, Auriculus, whoever this is, Auriculus, tells you that the skyjacker left the airplane in Seattle immediately upon takeoff, leaving Seattle. This is
Auriculus. My God, please. This is going to be Auriculus. Auriculus, whoever he is. He knows Auriculus very well. What a jerk, Dan.
This guy, Auriculus, who tells us this.
I believe Cooper's plans were to jump really almost immediately after the jet took off from Seattle. I believe his plans were to jump right there in the outskirts of Seattle or the exurbs of Seattle.
Hey man, if his DNA, you know, look, if Richard McCoy's DNA is somehow on that necktie, then so be it. Yeah, I'll be out of the job then. It's great. I can learn how to golf at that point. How about that?
Recently, I came across this tape that has been buried in the archives for a long time. I'm going to conclude this video, D.B. Cooper, Part 4, Deep Government Agenda, with this tape. This is solid gold, done by a guy named Lars Larson, personal friend of mine, at least he is now. Allowed me to use this tape. I did a Zoom call with him. He's going to tell you, Lars will tell you exactly that Richard Floyd McCoy was definitely D.B. Cooper, and he knew it in 1992. Lars is the guy that went and interviewed the two guys that wrote the book. He also interviewed the FBI on camera. That on-camera interview is on here, and specifically he asks the FBI, was it Richard Floyd McCoy, and they eliminate him. FBI eliminates him, which the FBI is not in the business of eliminating anybody on this early basis yet. They can't do it, and yet they went out and
wait, what? They don't eliminate people. I mean, okay, man. There are plenty of FBI files. Eliminate. They eliminated a lot of people.
And eliminated Richard Floyd McCoy on tape on the basis of Denise's testimony and this August 15, 302. That's the only thing that they have to eliminate Richard Floyd.
That is a damn lie. They have him writing a check the day before the hijacking at BYU. They have him in class the day before the hijacking. Okay. This whole Vegas trip happened afterwards. Okay, they have the gas receipt. They have a phone call made in Vegas. All this happened after Thanksgiving. Okay, Thanksgiving was over with. Okay, after lunch, they went out. It's in the, what's amazing is it's in the book, The Real McCoy. That's actually in the book, The Real McCoy, that they went after Thanksgiving to Vegas. So just inventing things.
McCoy. I'm going to leave you with this. This is the Zoom call with Lars. He's going to give you the backstory on it. And then right after that, I'll put the video that Lars actually produced for his news station back in 1992. In the studio today with Lars. Larson, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, Dan. Thanks for the invitation.
I appreciate this. It's going to be very, very quick here, but you produced something that I just came across that I don't believe the world has ever seen. It is exquisitely done from a long time ago, back when you actually had hair and it was a lot darker.
Yes, I did. And that's what TV does to you. They told me I had a face for radio, so I had to go back to radio instead. I did 20 years in television out of 50 years in broadcast. Radio is a lot more fun, and these days podcasting too.
Exactly. Well, you took the initiative and you went and interviewed the two guys,
Russ Callum and Bernie Rhodes. And to tell you who they were, we do that in the piece, but they were, respectively, the former special agent in charge, called the SAC, of the FBI office in Salt Lake, Utah, and also the former federal head of federal parole and probation. And these two gentlemen worked together. And after their service in government, they decided to write this book because they were convinced that Richard Floyd McCoy of Provo, Utah, was in fact D.B. Cooper. And while they didn't indict the FBI and say, these guys screwed it up, I read the book. I said, I ran across the book, and I don't even remember how I ran across it back in those days before the internet, before social media and all that. I just saw the book and thought, well, I'm interested in Cooper. He's here in the Northwest. Let's do a piece on this. And we flew down to Salt Lake and interviewed both Callum and Rhodes and talked to them about the very tight case they'd made back then that Richard Floyd McCoy is in fact, or was in fact, D.B. Cooper. He's dead now. And so we put this piece together. And the news magazine we produced was once a week, Sunday nights at 9 o'clock. And this piece was around 13 or 14 minutes long. And we put everything we could cram into it because we couldn't begin to touch all the detail that's in Callum and Rhodes' book.
Yes. And you even went and interviewed the FBI. To me, the theme that I have here is deep government agenda. They had an agenda here that clearly switched around. Originally, they were trying to catch the guy. When they couldn't catch him, they got embarrassed. They figured out that who it was, but now they had been in his home, an illegal search and seizure. They had a real problem. Now it turned over to an agenda. They wanted to no longer be embarrassed, and they wanted to cover this up. There's a thing called an FBI 302. I'm going to put it on the screen and read it real quick. But this
Okay, just wait a second here. He keeps talking about an illegal search warrant. So this illegal search warrant did not preclude them from convicting him of the April hijacking. So why would it have precluded him from being convicted of the November 24, 71 skyjacking if they found something in the house? Whatever, man. I mean, again, they could have just framed McCoy, or if he was Cooper, then just make the case he was Cooper, or just say it. I mean, they could have just come out. This is the 70s. They could have just come out and said, we think it's Cooper, and we killed him now. Like, agenda, geez.
FBI 302 is basically a document that the FBI can create without any witness signature or with any substantiation. In August of 1972, now they want to come up with an FBI 302 that substantiates that McCoy was in his home for Thanksgiving.
But why? Why would they make this up? Why would they make it up to not solve the case? That none of this makes sense. This is illogical. I can't even begin. What?
This 302, I've got it on the screen here right now. It magically appears and says this unknown student from Asia who is yet to be named was at the McCoy home. Now, when you went and interviewed the FBI, you went to Seattle and you interviewed the guy. Tell us the difference between what the FBI normally does as far as naming or not naming people, and what did they tell you? You personally interviewed the FBI guy in Seattle, and that's all in your document.
And in the actual piece, we show the interview with an FBI agent in Portland, the SAC for Portland at the time, back in '92. And he said specifically, we have excluded Richard McCoy as a suspect. Now, ordinarily, the FBI does not talk a lot about its investigation. So, for instance, if I called the FBI and said, are you investigating Dan Gryder? They would say, we refuse to say whether we are or we are not. And it's not a bad policy, because you can imagine the cloud that would be cast on any citizen if the FBI said, yeah, we're investigating Dan Gryder. Well, when is that investigation going to finish? We don't know. It could go on for years. You'd sit under that cloud, nor do they generally come out and say, we have completed our investigation of Dan Gryder and we have now excluded him. But in this case, I pushed them. I said, look, you had this guy in custody. You convicted him of one skyjacking, the one in April the next year after the Cooper skyjack around Thanksgiving of the previous year. You have the gas station receipt. You have a collect phone call from the Vegas Strip to the McCoy household, and they explained it away as a wrong number. Unfortunately, the telephone record showed that the call went on for minutes. Now, all of us get wrong numbers from time to time.
That's all in the FBI files. Like, this call was made to Denise. They called in Vegas. They called to check on their kids. They went after Thanksgiving was done. They went and had like an anniversary vacation in Vegas, Richard and Karen. Like, they called to check on their kids. What's the mystery here? There is no mystery. And this call happened I think, in the AM of the 25th. Or the 26th. This was the day after Thanksgiving, I think even. Like, this is people who don't know the case just talking.
We don't generally sit and have a long conversation with somebody who says, oh, I called the wrong number. They hang up, you hang up, it's over. It wasn't that kind of call. It was a longer call. And of course, what I believe is that Richard Floyd McCoy drove his car, I think it was a Volkswagen Beetle, down to Vegas, parked it in the airport parking lot, bought a ticket, flew to Portland, landed on the ground, went to the counter, which you could in those days, buy another ticket for cash, mark his name down as Dan Cooper, not DB. That was a mistake made by the AP. Gets on the plane to Seattle, hijacks the plane, says he's got a bomb, demands money and parachutes. They take off from Seattle. He bails out of the back door of the back loading ramp from the plane, which was possible on some models of planes, and disappears completely. And then almost 6 months later, a nearly identical, but from a technical standpoint, better skyjacking was.
Well, no, it wasn't better. Okay, so let's just process this, people. Okay, so McCoy drives his Beetle to Vegas. Okay. Drives his Beetle to Vegas, flies to Portland, then gets a ticket, then goes to Seattle, jumps out. How does he get back to Vegas to get his car? What plane does he board with a parachute that he is allegedly keeping and the money, or he's going to say he lost the money, but like his souvenir. He boarded a plane with a souvenir and made it back by 10 a.m. the next day. Because look, the FBI did not make up this exchange student being there. That is so preposterous to think that. Okay. So, and Dan's like, oh, it happened in August the next year. Well, he's relying on Earl Cossey's statements almost half a century later. So, okay. Anyway, how would McCoy get back all the way? If he left his car in Vegas, how would he get back? How would he get back on a plane to get to Vegas and then get in his car and drive back to be home for Thanksgiving? And then, okay.
Staged by Richard Floyd McCoy. He got caught. So you say the FBI has this guy right in front of them. They have a collect phone call from the Vegas Strip to his home on Thanksgiving Day at the time where he might have returned to Vegas, perhaps to clean up the money, and then gas up his car and drive back to Provo, Utah, while his family is telling the FBI, no, he was at home for Thanksgiving dinner. And as you point out, they come up with this 302. Think of it as a little memo that if the police or the FBI in this case writes a report, we've had a report from somebody, we're going to commit that to paper, so we're going to memorialize it, like the lawyers say, and they write this 302 report, and they create it 9 months later to try to cover their excusing Richard Floyd McCoy, which then fast forward to 1992, 20 years.
But why? Again, this is illogical to these. I like Lars Larson, but like, why would they cover? Why would they not want McCoy if they knew he was Cooper? Well, why would they not want him to be Cooper? Why would they make up a document to not catch a guy? If you make up a document, you make up a document to frame the guy. You don't make up a document to give somebody an excuse. Good Lord.
Later, and they say, we have excluded McCoy as a suspect. End of story.
When you sat in that office with the FBI, he specifically told you that they have excluded Richard Floyd McCoy.
You will see that in the piece. I'm one of those reporters where you get one of those halfway answers. Well, we've looked at McCoy and we're not entirely. No. I say, is he a suspect or not? Is he still considered a suspect, even though he was dead at that point, or have you excluded him? And they said, and I had to go, I don't even remember all the conversation, but I said, look, the guy's dead. He's already convicted of one skyjacking. He's dead because he died in a shootout with the FBI after he began robbing banks, after he escaped from prison. He'd escaped from jail. He also escaped from prison. This was a bad guy. He ends up dying, and it may have been a setup, as I believe that you think it was, and that case could easily be made. This guy was a gigantic embarrassment to the FBI, and they wanted him gone. So in 1992, they say on camera, on audio, to me in an interview, we have excluded him. And now here we are sitting here 32 years later, Dan, and we've got a parachute that's possessed by the now late wife of Richard McCoy, who's passed away. And where did this parachute come from? And the rigger says, that's the way I rigged the D.B. Cooper parachute,
he didn't.
which puts the FBI right back in the bullseye again.
And when you talked to Bernie and Russ, they specifically told you, even though they were no longer working for their respective agencies, they specifically told you that they had that data, the gas receipt, the phone call, that was not disputable at the time.
Nope, it was not. And it was key evidence because, these days we have all kinds of electronic records and everybody's got a camera on their cell phone. But back then, what did you have? To prove that a guy was in Vegas? Well, a collect phone call from the Vegas Strip to the Richard Floyd McCoy home that lasted for minutes. That's hard to explain. Who was it from the McCoy family or friends or family of the McCoy family who would have been on the Vegas Strip? Remember that for context, if McCoy was LDS, didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't gamble. What in the world would a non-smoking, non-drinking, non-gambling LDS member be doing in Las Vegas on?
Wait, I thought he didn't smoke. So what in the world would he be doing hijacking a plane for one thing if he's a devout LDS and you're saying he doesn't smoke? Well, Cooper smoked. But again, folks, the phone call was to check on the kids, as you do. Hey, you call the babysitter, which was Denise, the sister-in-law. How are the kids doing? This is not complicated. All of this happens after Thanksgiving. All of it lines up precisely with the story that they took a vacation after Thanksgiving. Okay. Again, McCoy was a nice guy. He invited exchange students to his house for Thanksgiving. He was there for Thanksgiving. They have him the day before. They have him writing checks, like at BYU. Like he wasn't gone that week.
On the Las Vegas Strip on Thanksgiving Day, for goodness sake.
Lars, I think you did an amazing job. I'm shocked that I never saw it until recently. That's how come I called and bugged you for this intro. I want you to introduce, I'm going to play this thing on my YouTube channel in its entirety, courtesy of you and credit to you. You did an amazing job. Give me the intro for this. Tell people what they're about to see because I'm about to put it on here next.
Okay, so, all right, we'll just stop there. Okay, so the rest of it, I guess he's going to show the long segment, which is an interesting segment to watch. But again, it's got the FBI saying, look, we wanted the guy to be Cooper. He wasn't Cooper, full stop. That FBI agent that they were showing a while ago, Robin Montgomery, straight up says, we would have made him Cooper if we could have, but we could not because he wasn't DB Cooper. Okay, why is it that McCoy people, to be so married to a suspect, that you're so agenda driven that, like, again, I keep saying to this, like, if you took the people with the 300, if you could do God mode and like get the 300 most knowledgeable people on the DB Cooper case, the people who go to the Cooper cons and things, people who literally just spend all day online reading things, none of them believe it was McCoy. Like, none. Like, if you are a hardcore Cooperite who believes that McCoy was Cooper, I don't know you. Join the Facebook group, the official DB Cooper group. Come argue with us. Like, if you think that. But again, it's funny. Every time I ask a McCoy person, well, why do you think it's McCoy? Well, he looks like the sketch. Well, I look like the sketch sometimes. Like, that doesn't count. Looks like the sketch. Looks like a cartoon. Okay. Well, why else? Well, he did the same thing as Cooper did. Well, so did 5 other guys. It was a fad to jump out of, it's called parachute hijacking. Parajacking was a fad in the spring and summer of 72. Okay, 16 people tried it. 5 actually got out with money. McCoy was not unique. He was not the only one. Okay, so I think that's the issue is people think that he was the only one, but he wasn't. So anywho, yes, as expected, Dan has to attack 302s now. They're transcriptions. They're not direct interviews. Yet somehow Earl Cossey in 200 files I've got on Kasi is consistent the entire time. No D-rings, no modifications, no cape wells, no enlarged pack tray. Time and time again. And again, all of you who are Gryder people, why has he never shown this description of this parachute? He just says it. He's just saying, this was a modified parachute with D-rings and cape wells and a large pack tray. Well, show us who says that. Show us where it says that. Where did Earl Kasi say that? Because Earl Kasi did not say that. Earl Kasi never said he added D-rings to it. Okay? Earl Kasi never said he put cape wells on it. He just didn't. Okay? So, the only person who ever has this description of D.B. Cooper's parachute is Dan Gryder himself. Okay? So, what a coincidence that the Frankenstein's monster parachute that you pull out of a box fits your description of it to a T. So, okay, that's very convenient. But anyway, as expected, that's what he's going to say, is that the FBI are wrong, 302s are wrong, we can't believe the evidence, they have an agenda. And again, I keep going back to this. What would their agenda be to not have him be McCoy? I mean, to not have McCoy be Cooper? What would it? I don't understand. This is Dan moonwalking Michael Jackson style. He is trying to moonwalk out of this thing and save face. He's about to get embarrassed, especially, like I said, with the FBI come out. They rarely do, but this is getting a lot of attention. They may come out and say, hey, not Cooper's parachute. I don't expect them to, but if they do, now Dan can say why. This is their agenda. So either Dan has gotten bad news or he just doesn't like the debunking video, but hopefully people will. Well, the good thing about Dan is he's trying to convince Cooper people, but he won't convince any Cooper people, okay? Because nobody else really cares. That's why he's so concerned he wanted Darren Schaefer to go on his podcast and say, admit that I solved this. That's why he emailed me saying, I owe a duty to my people to admit that he solved it. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that, Dan. Okay? And this whole attack on, well, this is like a cash cow for me or other Cooper people. Now, this is a hobby. We lose money on this. Okay, I think maybe the only person who's ever made money on D.B. Cooper is probably Jeffrey Gray, the author of Skyjack. That's it. Okay, these things cost money. Flying to hosting CooperCon conference, I don't make any money off that. It doesn't go in my pockets. Okay, I haven't profited anything. So that's a weird attack that I don't want this solved. Probably no one on earth wants this more solved than I do, okay? Because that's all I do is try to solve this thing. So Dan didn't solve it. To attack us for attacking him by saying that we just don't want it solved is an absurd, illogical argument. We're all in this mystery to solve it. So it's like saying, a person's a Christian because they want to go to heaven, and then saying, well, actually, you don't really want to go to heaven. Well, then why am I doing all this? Why am I going to church if I don't want to go to heaven? Why am I being a good little Christian if I don't want to go to heaven? So it's the same thing. Why am I doing all of this if I don't want to see it solved? Look, I would love for Richard McCoy to have been D.B. Cooper. He has a great story. It's tragic. It's interesting. There should be a freaking Netflix series on it, on what he actually did in his life. Okay, you can leave out the Cooper stuff because he wasn't Cooper, okay? But I have no problem with Rick McCoy or Shanti McCoy, the kids. They seem like good people, okay? But Dan is lying about all of this. This is a lie. The FBI have not said that they're not convinced that D.B. Cooper and McCoy are the same person. They're not. They have not said that this parachute, this Frankenstein's monster inoperable parachute that doesn't match any description ever made by anybody except for Dan is the actual parachute. They've not said that. He's just saying these things. He goes on CNN with this canopy that is from 1943. We know the canopy is from July 1960. Like that's, documented. So I don't know. But anyway, there's my reaction to Dan's response to me or whatever. So eventually, hopefully, I'll stop having to talk about Dan Gryder and I can get back to DB Cooper stuff. I'm sure a lot of my viewers are begging me to do that. But at any rate, y'all be good and like and subscribe and all that YouTubey stuff. And we'll talk again soon. Bye.